First, the search for Benjamin Braddock was not easy. Director Mike Nichols wanted a fresh face, someone unlike the established stars of the day. Many expected a typical leading man, tall and handsome, but Nichols thought the character needed awkwardness and vulnerability. Over 100 young actors auditioned, including Charles Grodin and Robert Redford. But Nichols felt they were too self-assured. When Dustin Hoffman came to audition, he was nervous and uncertain he had a chance, thinking himself too unusual for the part. During his screen test with Katharine Ross, Hoffman was so anxious he accidentally bumped into Ross's hair, but Nichols saw the spark of something real. The contrast between his unease and the character's confusion felt genuine, making Hoffman the perfect unexpected choice. As for Mistress Robinson, Nichols wanted someone who could be both alluring and intimidating. Anne Bancroft, though only 6 years older than Hoffman, had a presence that convinced everyone she belonged in the role. Her audition revealed she could switch between icy confidence and subtle despair, a big reason she won the part. For Elaine, the team almost chose someone else, but Katharine Ross's chemistry with Hoffman during the screen test sealed her selection. There was a real sense of tension and attraction, just what the characters needed. Audition rooms were full of nerves, but those pivotal moments, like Hoffman's earnest apology after his clumsy move and Bancroft's commanding voice filling the space, left lasting impressions. The final cast had an unusual dynamic that brought out feelings of confusion, desire, and humor that defined the film's tone. Meanwhile, director Mike Nichols approached The Graduate with a fresh and bold vision that challenged many movie traditions of the 1960s. Drawing inspiration from the French New Wave, Nichols paid close attention to how scenes were framed, sometimes placing actors behind glass or using sharp angles to emphasize feelings of isolation and confusion. He used silence and awkward pauses to let the audience share in Benjamin's discomfort, showing more with what was not said than what was. For Nichols, telling Benjamin's story was about showing a young man's struggle in a world that felt meaningless and pressuring. He worked carefully with Dustin Hoffman and Anne Bancroft, encouraging them to take risks and to dive into their characters' insecurities. On set, Nichols created an open, experimental space, relying on spontaneous takes and trusting the actors' natural instincts. He often collaborated with the cinematographer to shape the film's unusual visual style, lingering on subtle moments and unexpected cuts. The choice to use popular Simon and Garfunkel songs instead of a traditional score helped ground the story in its time and deepen the sense of loneliness. Sometimes Nichols even moved the camera slowly, making viewers notice every detail and feel the weight of the characters' decisions. Through careful planning and a willingness to let scenes breathe, Nichols made The Graduate a story that felt honest, modern, and unforgettable. Right from its opening scene, The Graduate stands out as a film that both defined and challenged a whole generation. This 1967 movie tells the story of Benjamin Braddock, a recent college graduate struggling to find direction, who falls into a complicated relationship with Mistress Robinson. The movie became famous for its bold topics, unforgettable soundtrack, and unusual comedy that was new for its time. But there are many funny, shocking, and even sad facts you probably haven't heard yet, so keep watching this video if you want the full story. For example, Dustin Hoffman almost didn't get the main role because he was considered too awkward and nervous, but that raw energy is part of what makes his performance so unique. The famous scene where Benjamin bangs on the glass at the church wasn't originally scripted that way. Hoffman's improvisation added a layer of chaos and emotion. The director, Mike Nichols, was only just starting his career and pushed for Simon and Garfunkel's music even when the studio thought it wouldn't fit. Some people say that the scuba diving scene captured the way young adults felt trapped by society's rules. Are there any lesser-known facts or anecdotes about this movie that fascinate you? Everyone seems to have a different favorite moment, and some details still surprise fans after all these years. Are there any lesser-known facts or anecdotes about this movie that fascinate you? We'd also love to hear your most cherished memory or personal experience related to The Graduate. So please share your stories and memories in the comments below. Often, the production of The Graduate turned Hollywood's standard practices on their head. Director Mike Nichols and his team created a new mood for the late 60s by blending everyday California locations with smart, careful set design. Much of the filming took place in and around Los Angeles, using real homes in the suburban neighborhood of Pasadena to reflect Ben's middle-class background. For Mistress Robinson's sun-drenched home, The crew filled the interiors with reflective surfaces, wide-set couches, and muted colors that quietly echoed her aloof personality. Meanwhile, for Ben's parents' house and Elaine's college campus, scenes unfolded at actual universities and poolside backyards, using existing architecture to mix realism with style. Sometimes, the technical aspects pushed boundaries. Nichols and cinematographer Robert Surtees employed long, lingering shots, sometimes with the actors' faces seen through glass or trapped inside odd frames, like the famous sequence of Ben viewed through Mistress Robinson's bent knee. This approach wasn't common at the time, and helped show Ben's confusion and isolation. Shooting in real locations brought logistical headaches. For instance, capturing scenes at the real University of Southern California meant working around student crowds and strict limits on where the crew could set up. Nichols also pushed to use Simon and Garfunkel's music in a way that hadn't been done in film before. Their songs didn't just play as background. They became part of Ben's emotional state, almost like a dialogue or inner voice. Often, the crew built complex camera rigs to pull off difficult underwater shots, especially for the famous pool scenes, requiring both innovation and patience. Later, the production used editing tricks like fast jump cuts and overlapping sound, which made the movie feel quicker and more contemporary. Everything about the film's look, from the modern furnishings to the use of bright California sunlight, was chosen to make viewers feel that The Graduate was happening in a world just like their own, not on a movie set far away from everyday life. While problems arose, like sudden weather changes or the need to keep locations secret from fans, the crew adapted on the fly, bringing a fresh energy to every scene. Every choice, from camera angles to set design, brought a new style to Hollywood that audiences noticed right away. However, The Graduate stands out among older movies because it tackles subjects that still spark debate today, using a blend of humor and discomfort to explore situations that newer films often avoid. The story follows Benjamin Braddock, a recent college graduate, as he stumbles through confusion and uncertainty, caught between the expectations of youth and adulthood. While some viewers might be bothered by scenes that feel a bit forced, finding the comedy occasionally awkward, others appreciate how these moments capture the real nervousness and unease of someone confronting their first experiences, especially when it comes to love and relationships. There's a relatability in Ben's hesitance and discomfort as he awkwardly navigates his first night with Mistress Robinson and tries to figure out where he belongs, neither fitting with his parents' world nor fully embracing the new culture of his own generation. Still, the film is not about celebrating rebellion or asking the audience to cheer for Ben's choices. Instead, it carefully presents the struggles of someone who feels lost and directionless, unsure where to go in life. The iconic final scene shows Ben and Elaine on a bus, seemingly happy at first, but quickly falling into silent uncertainty about their future. This moment, paired with the haunting soundtrack by Paul Simon, feels just as relevant today as it did when the movie was first released. Though Ben acts, he hasn't truly found the answers he is looking for, reflecting the sense of drift so many people feel after big life transitions. This timeless quality is partly thanks to Mike Nichols' direction, which uses clever visual storytelling, like scenes at the swimming pool, to show Ben's feeling of being trapped and disconnected. The shifting focus of the camera draws attention to different characters and conversations, adding to the sense of isolation and confusion. Despite differing opinions on the film's humor and pacing, most agree that the performances by Dustin Hoffman and Bancroft carry a great weight, giving depth to their troubled and complicated characters. The music, especially Sound of Silence and Scarborough Fair, creates a lingering, emotional effect that stays with viewers long after the credits roll. For those who enjoy stories about characters confronting difficult choices and dealing with social pressures, The Graduate continues to offer a complex and thought-provoking experience, even to new generations who weren't around when it first came out, since many of its themes about feeling lost and searching for meaning remain relevant now. Long before the first image appears, the sound of Simon and Garfunkel's acoustic guitar in The Sound of Silence sets the tone for The Graduate, mirroring Benjamin's confusion and detachment as he arrives home from college. Director Mike Nichols wanted more than a standard orchestral score. He imagined music that could represent the unspoken emotions of a character lost in a world he can't relate to. Nichols personally approached Paul Simon, whose introspective lyrics and melodic simplicity fit the film's mood. Nichols asked Simon for new songs, but, as the story goes, Simon was slow to write them, bringing only one fresh song. So instead, Nichols built the soundtrack around existing Simon and Garfunkel songs like Mistress Robinson, which was developed specifically for the movie, and Scarborough Fair, each threading through scenes to underline longing, anxiety, rebellion. Dave Grusin also contributed with simple, jazzy instrumentals, punctuating scenes with an uneasy calm that played off the folk pop tracks. As Benjamin's journey turns desperate or ecstatic, the music reflects it, sometimes highlighting the absurdity of his actions, sometimes wrapping the scenes in melancholy. The soundtrack freed the story from its era, letting Simon and Garfunkel's soft harmonies evoke a timeless sense of dislocation and yearning, turning the film's narrative into a quiet protest and making every awkward silence cut even deeper. Simon once described the process as a lucky accident, the right songs finding the right story. The result is a soundtrack that not only fits, but shapes the entire emotional journey of the graduate, expressing what words and faces cannot say on their own, and turning background music into a main character of its own. Meanwhile, in the same era that saw one actor launch a career by playing federal agent model on a teenage-focused television show, others involved in similar productions found themselves connected across multiple projects spanning years. During this period, an actor who built his reputation through dramatic roles was actually considered for parts that would eventually become well-known works of another filmmaker, including positions in comedies, and even later dramatic films that stretched into the late 90s. The web of relationships in Hollywood did not stop there, as another performer would later become notable for mentoring a young actor in a mid-80s film, before returning on screen 2 years later to embody the adult version of that same character in a coming-of-age adaptation. These paths show how careers develop, with young and unknown actors taking parts in comedies or television, and sometimes moving into more complex or acclaimed films. The ongoing interplay of casting decisions, early roles, and the process of mentoring among actors helped create lasting impacts in film and television history. Recognizing these connections, it becomes clear how each opportunity, from sitcoms and minor supporting parts to direct continuations years later, can shape the arc of an actor's journey in the industry. Looking back at The Graduate, the most iconic scenes reveal how director Mike Nichols and his team turned a coming-of-age story into something unforgettable. One of the earliest memorable moments is Benjamin floating in the pool, isolated after college, with Simon and Garfunkel's music echoing through the moment. Nichols used long takes and close-ups to show Benjamin's confusion, framing him alone in the water so viewers feel his emptiness. Dustin Hoffman's blank stare adds to the tone, pairing perfectly with the famous soundtrack. Next comes Mistress Robinson's seduction scene. Nichols chose careful lighting and slow camera movement, and Bancroft's calm, powerful delivery underscored the awkward tension. Hoffman's inexperience as an actor mingled with his character's nervousness, which turned this supposedly steamy scene into something both funny and uncomfortable. Critics later praised how Nichols let the reactions breathe, never rushing conversations, letting the awkwardness speak louder than words. As Benjamin stands in the hotel hallway, shot through Mistress Robinson's bent leg, the film's use of visual symbolism is clear. Nichols himself said this shot was a deliberate choice to suggest Benjamin's entrapment. The church sequence near the film's end is famous for its energy and chaos. The camera shakes as Benjamin pounds on the glass to stop the wedding, echoing his desperate emotions. Hoffman shouted Elaine, so loudly that his voice cracked. Nichols kept the rough take, saying it made Benjamin's anguish real. The runaway exit, set to The Sound of Silence, lingers on the bus, showing Benjamin and Elaine slowly realizing what they've done. Nichols held the shot so long the actors looked genuinely lost, unsure what comes next. Hoffman later recalled that the silence made him uncomfortable at first, but he came to see it as the perfect statement about uncertainty and adulthood. These moments, crafted by sharp direction and truthful acting, invite audiences to remember what it feels like to be restless, unsure, and alive. Right before filming began, Dustin Hoffman changed course on his acting plans. He had lived next door to Mel Brooks in New York, and was set to appear as Franz Liebkind in Brooks's first film project. However, the chance to play Ben Braddock opposite Anne Bancroft in a major Hollywood project led him to request release from his existing commitment. Brooks, whose wife starred as Mistress Robinson, made space for Hoffman's sudden shift, and the part intended for him ended up with Kenneth Mars. While the film's screenplay is credited to both Calder Willingham and Buck Henry, the final shooting script was written solely by Henry, who had no knowledge of Willingham's version. Buck Henry had been the fourth writer approached for the adaptation. The disputes later arose, and Willingham asked the Writers Guild for credit, arguing that both writers drew heavily from Charles Webb's original novel, especially its dialogue, which was often used in both screenwriters' scripts. As a result, the share credit was confirmed. Additionally, Murray Hamilton, who played a supporting role, appeared in a total of 4 films nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture over his career, including this one, providing a connection to some of the most renowned films of the era. Meanwhile, as the 1960s rolled on, The Graduate burst onto movie screens and seemed to capture the spirit of a generation lost between old traditions and new freedoms. The film followed Benjamin Braddock, a recent college graduate who felt confused about adulthood, pressured by the expectations of his family and society, and drawn into a complicated affair. Audiences saw themselves in Benjamin's awkwardness, his discomfort at grown-up parties, and his struggle to find purpose. The famous line, "Plastics," became shorthand for the soulless advice offered by older generations, reflecting how younger people saw their futures as both empty and artificial. The soundtrack by Simon and Garfunkel, especially songs like "The Sound of Silence," mirrored the loneliness and uncertainty many people felt during that time. The movie's ending left things unresolved, with Benjamin and Elaine escaping together but staring blankly ahead, which encouraged viewers to question what real happiness and rebellion looked like. On college campuses, students and critics debated whether the film was a warning about conforming or a celebration of breaking free from it. The relationship between Benjamin and Mistress Robinson pushed boundaries, sparking discussion about age, gender, and power, while also showing the emptiness adults sometimes face in their own choices. The Graduate influenced later movies and television by making stories about alienation and the search for identity more common. It also helped make anti-heroes popular in American stories. Over the years, references to the film have popped up everywhere, from comedies to serious dramas, a sign of its impact on pop culture. Despite changing times, many still relate to Benjamin's confusion and need for something more, making the movie feel relevant to anyone uncertain about the next step in life. Despite coming from different backgrounds, the film brought together actors who made lasting impacts both on and off the screen. Dustin Hoffman later became a major supporter of the Santa Monica College Madison Theater, using his influence and resources to benefit the arts community in Santa Monica. Meanwhile, Richard Dreyfuss, who had a minor role in the film, continued his career with stage performances, including an appearance in London in Joe Sutton's play Complicit. During that production, his use of an earpiece drew criticism, as it was suggested he needed it to help remember his lines. Looking back to the casting process, Hoffman described his surprise when director Mike Nichols reached out to him for the lead role. Hoffman explained to Nichols that the character did not fit his type, mentioning the character's athletic build, background, and personality as being far from his own. Nichols simply responded that maybe the character was Jewish inside, which helped Hoffman feel comfortable, and eventually led to him being cast after a screen test. These details show how the film was shaped by key figures who brought their own identities, experiences, and challenges, which influenced the production and its legacy in unexpected ways. Nevertheless, when The Graduate was released in 1967, critics praised its sharp script, innovative direction by Mike Nichols, and the magnetic performance of Dustin Hoffman. Reviewers like Roger Ebert celebrated its unusual humor and relatable portrayal of young adulthood, while the New York Times admired Anne Bancroft's enigmatic Mistress Robinson. Some critics found the film's themes edgy or even scandalous for the time, but most audiences connected with its offbeat charm and the fresh perspective it brought. Throughout the country, viewers responded with both laughter and amazement, drawn in by its clever use of music and its sense of restless energy. Furthermore, The Graduate quickly became a cultural phenomenon, not just for its story, but for how it captured the mood of a changing generation. The music by Simon and Garfunkel, especially The Sound of Silence, helped give it a lasting impact. As for accolades, Mike Nichols won the Academy Award for Best Director, which solidified his standing as one of Hollywood's most talented filmmakers. The film also earned other Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Actor for Dustin Hoffman, Best Actress for Anne Bancroft, Best Supporting Actress for Katharine Ross, and honors in writing and cinematography. Additionally, the Golden Globes recognized The Graduate with awards for Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, Best Director, and Best Actor for Hoffman. The British Academy Film Awards and other groups also gave it nominations, underlining its global influence. These honors elevated the careers of everyone involved, turning Hoffman into an overnight star and giving Bancroft and Ross new visibility. Nichols' innovative approach to filmmaking set a new bar for American movies, while the screenwriters and musicians also benefited from the film's celebrated status. With its critical success and the many awards it gathered, The Graduate remains a touchstone for both film lovers and anyone interested in movies that reflect real change in society. Meanwhile, on the set of The Graduate in 1967, cast and crew found themselves swept up in a mix of nerves and unexpected humor. Dustin Hoffman, fresh from the New York stage and virtually unknown, felt uneasy about working alongside the elegant Anne Bancroft. He later described being so intimidated that he accidentally slapped her too hard during their first intimate scene and feared he'd get fired. Anne Bancroft, though, immediately put him at ease, laughing it off and telling him not to worry. Director Mike Nichols was only making his second film and was still figuring out how to handle the complex relationship at the story's core. For the famous scene where Benjamin drives across the Bay Bridge, the crew broke rules by shooting without permits, quickly hopping in real cars while Hoffman nervously tried to act natural with cameras hidden in the back seat. Simon and Garfunkel wrote Mistress Robinson as an unfinished song called Mistress Roosevelt before Nichols asked them to adapt it for the movie, and the musicians worked on it between takes on a portable tape recorder. Crew members joked about the messy wedding church scene because the extras cast as the bride's family grew so swept up in the action that they really shouted and pounded on the windows, almost causing real damage to the set. Through a haze of nerves, experiments, and on-the-fly solutions, everyone knew by the rap that something unique had happened, and years later the cast looked back at those days as chaotic, moving, and full of moments when everything felt brand new. Suddenly, The Graduate stood out in 1967 because it spoke to a new generation that felt lost in a changing world. Its story captured the awkwardness and confusion of youth through the character Benjamin Braddock, who doesn't know what to do after college. The film became a symbol for young people at that time and made big changes in how filmmakers approach storytelling. Before The Graduate, most movies followed clear rules about heroism, romance, and endings, but this film showed life's messiness with an ending that leaves everything open. Dialogue became sharper and more natural, and the use of Simon and Garfunkel's music made it even more memorable. Now, filmmakers use popular songs to create moods in ways The Graduate first explored. The camera work, like the shots of Benjamin below the surface of the swimming pool, uses images to show his isolation, and this inspired other directors to experiment with visual storytelling. Over time, many movies about lost young adults have been compared to The Graduate, and directors like Cameron Crowe and Wes Anderson have borrowed from its tone and style. Even the famous line, "Mistress Robinson, you're trying to seduce me," has lived on in pop culture, quoted in television, music, and literature. The Graduate's bold take on rebellion and disillusionment made movie studios more willing to tell stories about flawed characters and complicated situations. Movies like American Beauty, Rushmore, and Lost in Translation connect back to it, each exploring awkward but honest moments. Today, The Graduate is still studied in film schools as a turning point, showing how a single film can change how stories are told, remembered, and reimagined across generations. Back in 1967, The Graduate struck a chord with viewers everywhere, shaping the way many people looked at movies and even their own lives. Maybe you remember the wide-eyed Benjamin, the uncertainty on his face, or the unforgettable way Mistress Robinson changed his world. For some, the story brought laughter, maybe even nerves, with its daring humor and honest talk about the future. For others, the movie's music, especially Simon and Garfunkel's songs, became a soundtrack for times of big changes and tough choices. Sometimes, it's just a single line or an awkward scene that stays with you, reminding you of a younger self facing decisions that seemed as confusing and important as Ben's. Perhaps The Graduate made you see movies differently, offering fresh stories and new ways to talk about growing up or feeling lost. Now, it's your turn. Have you ever watched The Graduate and felt it speak to you in a special way? Maybe it brought back memories of your own coming-of-age moments, or maybe it changed the way you think about films and the generations that shaped them. Share your experiences and stories in the comments. Let us know how The Graduate made you feel or what it taught you. If you enjoy diving deep into classic movies and talking about the meaning behind unforgettable scenes, hit like, give us a share, and subscribe so we can keep exploring cinema